Mansur al-Hallaj, the mystic and his controversial legacy. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Sufi Essence with Hammad Syed. In the vast and complex history of Islamic spirituality, few figures are as enigmatic, revered, and controversial as Al-Husayn ibn Mansur al-Hallaj. His life, teachings, and especially his public execution in Baghdad in 922 CE have cemented his place in history. It's a symbol of the ecstatic dimensions of Sufism and the perennial tension between esoteric experience and exoteric religious law. For some, he is a blasphemer and a heretic who deserved his fate. For countless others, he is a martyr, a spiritual monarch, and the ultimate lover of Allah, a man who gave his life for the sake of a profound spiritual truth that he could not contain. Al-Hallaj was not just a mystic, he was a revolutionary. He pushed the boundaries of mystical expression, challenged the religious and political establishment, and through his life and death, forced the Islamic tradition to grapple with some of the most profound questions of faith and divine reality. His famous utterance, al-Haqq, "I am the real," sent shockwaves throughout the Islamic world and continues to be a subject of intense debate and scholarly inquiry. Was it a claim to divinity? Or was it the ultimate expression of the dissolution of the self in the ocean of divine reality? Our discourse today will be a comprehensive, structural, and exhaustive scholarly exploration of the life, teachings, and controversial legacy of Mansur al-Hallaj. We will argue that his story is a testament to the ecstatic potential of the spiritual path, but also a stark reminder of the delicate balance required between the inner experience and the outer form of religion. We will move beyond the simplistic narratives of hagiography and condemnation to provide a balanced and nuanced understanding of his life, his controversial sayings, his trial, and his enduring impact on the spiritual and intellectual history of Islam. This is not just a lecture on a historical figure. It is a profound journey into the heart of a spiritual master whose profound love for Allah continues to inspire and challenge us to this day. Part 1. The Life of a Mystic. The life of Al-Husayn ibn Mansur al-Hallaj, may Allah be pleased with him, is a tapestry woven with spiritual striving, its intellectual inquiry, and a profound journey across the lands of Islam. He was born in 858 CE in the Fars province of Persia, a region that was a center of rich cultural and intellectual heritage. His grandfather was a Zoroastrian, which for some is a significant detail, hinting at a cross-cultural spiritual influence, though he himself was a devout Muslim from a young age. His early life was marked by a deep sense of piety and a relentless pursuit of spiritual knowledge. He was an exceptionally intelligent child, and by the age of 12, he had already committed the entire Quran to memory. His formal spiritual training began under the tutelage of Sahl al-Tustari. May Allah be pleased with him, one of the great Sufi masters of his time. Under al-Tustari, al-Hallaj learned the rigorous discipline of self-mortification mujahada, which involved prolonged fasting, prayer, and an intense struggle against the lower ego-driven self-nafs. After spending 2 years with al-Tustari, he moved to Basra, where he became a disciple of Amr al-Makki. May Allah be pleased with him. His time with al-Makki was a period of further spiritual refinement and a deepening of his understanding of the esoteric dimensions of Islam. The turning point in his life came when he moved to Baghdad, the intellectual and political capital of the Abbasid Caliphate. In Baghdad, he sought the company of the great Sufi master, Junayd al-Baghdadi. May Allah be pleased with him, a figure who is often referred to as the Sultan of the Gnostics and a master of the sober school of Sufism. Junayd was a master of both the exoteric and esoteric sciences of Islam, and he was known for his caution and his emphasis on maintaining the balance between inner experience and outer law. Al-Hallaj's relationship with Junayd was complex and, for a time, a source of tension. Junayd was a master of esoteric secrets, but he was also a master of spiritual etiquette adab, and he advised Al-Hallaj to conceal his profound spiritual states from the public. Al-Hallaj, however, was unable to contain his inner experiences and felt a divine compulsion to share them with the world. Al-Hallaj's life was defined by a series of profound and transformative travels. He embarked on 3 pilgrimages to Mecca, each of which was a spiritual journey in itself. His first pilgrimage was a private one, where he spent a year in silence, contemplating the divine. His second pilgrimage was a more public one, where he began to preach his message to the masses. His third pilgrimage was the most controversial, where he stood in front of the Kaaba and prayed not for his own salvation, but for the salvation of humanity, an act that was seen as a profound violation of social and religious etiquette by many of his contemporaries. His travels also took him beyond the borders of the Islamic heartlands. He journeyed to India and Central Asia, where he engaged with other spiritual traditions and masters. His journeys were not just a physical movement from one place to another. They were a profound spiritual journey into the heart of humanity. He was a spiritual physician, a man who saw no distinction between people of different faiths. He saw all of humanity as children of Allah and offered his spiritual guidance to all who were in need. This radical universality of his message was a powerful and controversial aspect of his life. He was a Sufi who moved away from the quiet, private mysticism of his predecessors and embraced a more public and missionary form of Sufism, a form that was dedicated to the inner transformation of the individual and the compassionate service of the community. Part 2. The controversial utterances and the metaphysics of annihilation. The central controversy surrounding Mansur al-Hallaj, may Allah be pleased with him, revolves around his famous utterance, I am the real truth. This phrase, which he uttered in a state of spiritual ecstasy, sent shockwaves throughout the Islamic world and became the primary charge against him. For his critics, this was a clear and unambiguous claim to divinity, a heretical utterance that violated the very foundation of Tawhid, divine unity. They saw it as an act of profound arrogance, a self-aggrandizing claim that elevated a human being to the status of awe. However, for a long line of Sufi masters and scholars, from his own time to the present day, the meaning of this utterance is far more nuanced and profound. They interpret it not as a claim to divinity, but as an expression of a profound spiritual state known as Fana, annihilation of the self, and Baqa, subsistence in Allah. In this spiritual state, the seeker's own sense of self, their own ego, is so completely effaced and dissolved in the ocean of divine reality that they no longer speak from their own limited, created self, but from a state of profound divine presence. The phrase Ana al-Haqq in this context is not a statement of the self, but a negation of the self. It is a profound declaration that there is no I that exists apart from the divine. It is the culmination of a long and arduous spiritual journey, a journey that begins with the purification of the soul and ends with the dissolution of the ego. The famous saying of the Prophet Muhammad, "He who knows his own self knows his Lord," is a profound spiritual truth that is at the heart of this experience. The journey into the self is a journey into Allah, and the ultimate realization of this journey is the dissolution of the self in the presence of the divine. Al-Hallaj's saying in this context is not a claim to divinity, but a profound declaration of the non-existence of the self in the presence of the divine. It is a spiritual truth that is echoed in the famous saying of Abu Bakr, "May Allah be pleased with him. My heart has been filled with the light of the certainty that is beyond any doubt," and in the sayings of countless other Sufi masters who, in a state of spiritual ecstasy, made utterances that were often misunderstood by the uninitiated. Al-Hallaj also made other controversial utterances and wrote poetry that was often misinterpreted. He was a man who spoke from a state of profound spiritual realization, a state that was often beyond the grasp of the ordinary intellect. His poetry, with its rich symbolism and its passionate declarations of divine love, was often seen as heretical by the uninitiated, who could not comprehend the esoteric language of the mystics. He spoke of a direct, unmediated relationship with all, a relationship that was based on love and intimacy, rather than on fear and obedience. This was a radical and revolutionary message that challenged the religious and political establishments of his time. He was a spiritual monarch who refused to bow to the authority of the religious and political establishments, a man who spoke the truth of his heart, even at the cost of his own life. Part 3. The Trial, Execution, and Theological Aftermath. The life of Mansur al-Hallaj, may Allah be pleased with him, reached its tragic and defining climax in the city of Baghdad. His public sermons and his controversial utterances, which had been a source of tension for many years, finally reached a point where they could no longer be ignored by the religious and political establishments. In 913 CE, he was arrested and brought to trial on charges of heresy, sorcery, and political subversion. The trial was a long and arduous affair, lasting for several years, and it was a public spectacle that attracted a great deal of attention. The charges against him were multifaceted. The religious authorities, led by the legal scholars and the theologians, accused him of heresy, of claiming divinity, and of violating the fundamental principles of Tawhid. They saw his saying, al-Haqq, as a clear and unambiguous act of blasphemy. The political authorities, led by the Abbasid vizier, accused him of political subversion, of having a hidden agenda to overthrow the caliphate. They saw his popularity with the masses and his universal message of divine love as a threat to their own authority. They also accused him of sorcery, of having a hidden power that he used to attract and deceive the masses. During his trial, al-Hallaj, may Allah be pleased with him, remained steadfast and unyielding. He refused to recant his sayings or to apologize for his beliefs. He stood firm in his conviction that his words were a profound spiritual truth that had been revealed to him by all. He was a man who was willing to give his life for the sake of his beliefs. A man who saw death not as an end, but as a beginning, a moment of profound union with Allah. His steadfastness during the trial and his profound spiritual insight made him a martyr for many of his followers, a man who was willing to sacrifice everything for the sake of divine love. His brutal execution in 922 CEE was a public spectacle that was designed to be a deterrent to others who dared to challenge the religious and political establishments. He was crucified, his body was dismembered, and his ashes were scattered in the Tigris River. The execution was a tragic and defining moment in the history of Islam, a moment that forced the Islamic tradition to grapple with some of the most profound questions of faith and divine reality. The theological aftermath of his death was a source of intense debate and controversy. Some Sufis and legal scholars, in a state of fear and confusion, condemned him as a heretic and a blasphemer. Others, however, saw his death as a tragic martyrdom, a testament to his profound love for all. The great Sufi masters and scholars who came after him, such as Ibn Arabi, may Allah be pleased with him, and Al-Ghazali, may Allah be pleased with him, provided a more nuanced and compassionate understanding of his life and his teachings. They defended his spiritual state, arguing that his ecstatic utterances were not a claim to divinity, but a manifestation of a profound spiritual experience that was beyond the grasp of the ordinary intellect. They saw him not as a heretic, but as a martyr, a man who was a victim of his own profound spiritual realization. Part 4. The enduring legacy of al-Hallaj. The legacy of Mansur al-Hallaj, may Allah be pleased with him, is a living, breathing spiritual tradition that continues to inspire and challenge us to this day. His life, teachings, and death have had a profound and lasting impact on Sufi thought, on Islamic poetry and literature, and on the very questions that the Islamic tradition grapples with. His impact on later Sufi thought is monumental. He became a symbol of the true lover of Allah, a man who was willing to sacrifice everything for the sake of divine love. The great Sufi masters who came after him, such as Ibn Arabi, may Allah be pleased with him, and Al-Ghazali, may Allah be pleased with him, saw him as a spiritual monarch, a man who, through his life and death, defined the boundaries of mystical expression within Islam. They learned from his example that the spiritual secrets must be kept hidden from the uninitiated, that the ecstatic utterances of the mystics must be placed in their proper context, and that the balance between the inner and outer dimensions of religion must be maintained. His influence on later poetic and literary traditions is also profound. He is a central figure in the poetry of Rumi, may Allah be pleased with him, who saw him as the embodiment of divine love. His story, with its themes of love, martyrdom, and spiritual ecstasy, has been a source of inspiration for countless poets and writers, who have used his story as a metaphor for the human condition and the relentless pursuit of spiritual truth. His famous saying, al-Haqq, has become a central motif in Sufi poetry, a phrase that is used to express the ultimate spiritual truth of the non-existence of the self in the presence of the divine. The enduring question that he poses to Islam is a question that continues to resonate with us today. What is the relationship between the inner, esoteric reality of spiritual experience and the outer, exoteric reality of the divine law? Al-Hallaj, through his life and death, forced the Islamic tradition to grapple with this question, a question that is at the very heart of the spiritual path. He taught us that the inner and outer dimensions of religion are not in conflict. They're two sides of the same coin, two dimensions of a single reality. The inner reality of the spiritual experience must be grounded in the outer reality of the divine law, and the outer reality of the divine law must be animated by the inner reality of the spiritual experience. In conclusion, Mansur al-Hallaj, may Allah be pleased with him, was not just a mystic. He was a spiritual monarch, a man who, through his life and death, pushed the boundaries of mystical expression, challenged the religious and political establishments, and forced the Islamic tradition to grapple with some of the most profound questions of faith and divine reality. His story is a testament to the ecstatic potential of the spiritual path, a path that is fraught with danger and challenges, but a path that in the end leads to a state of profound and intimate union with awe. His legacy is a living spiritual tradition that continues to inspire and challenge us to this day. Thank you for joining us on this intellectual and spiritual journey. Please subscribe to our channel to continue our exploration of the rich and profound essence of Sufism.